blood tribe in the Blackfoot Confederacy, and she practices her Siksikaitsatapi ways. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's degree in sociology, and a doctoral degree in education. Her expertise, her dissertation topic, lies in Indian residential schools and the perspectives of the Blackfoot Confederacy. And her research focused on the experiences of survivors from the Blackfoot Confederacy from 6 Indian residential schools. Her expertise spans beyond that. It includes that of Indigenous healing practices and beliefs. She leads an award-winning program in Southern Alberta called the Kainai Wellness Center on the Blood Tribe Reserve. We are just so honored to have you here again with us, Dr. Fox, and we very much look forward to the things you have to share with us and teach us today.
Okay, and good morning, everyone. My sincerest apologies about the technology glitches. And I want to greet you this fine Friday morning from Southern Alberta, which is Calgary, the home of many Indigenous peoples throughout Canada, but specifically home of the Blackfoot Confederacy or Siksikaitsatapi people. So, Nistuokok Abikkweikamodaki. That's my traditional Blackfoot name, as many of you have heard me share that before. I feel like I'm a radio station host, and I'm coming to you from Calgary, Alberta again. So thanks for joining me and Ace again this morning. It's a beautiful morning here. So as mentioned, Indigenous healing practices, they have a different context for each First Nations peoples. I'm going to speak specifically for Siksikaitsatapi people, as I'm from this nation, and my teachings, my learnings, language, worldview come from this specific culture. But I'm going to broadly speak about some common practices as we move forward. And I myself am grounded in these traditional healing practices and ceremonies, as I'm a direct descendant of 2 grandparents of their mentors. They were teachers. So my grandparents, Mugakin and Buna, Pat and Paula Weaselhead, who taught many people throughout Turtle Island. And Adolf Hungry Wolf, along with Beverly Hungry Wolf, in their book titled The Blood People, Adolf asked my grandfather at the time what he thought about recording people and writing down the oral tradition. And this is what my grandfather had to say. You ask what I think of pictures and writings. I think it is very good to make a record of what goes on. Life is changing very fast. Soon these scenes will only be memories. The young people will never know how we operated our holy ways if they cannot see or read or hear these records that can be made today. We all have treasured photographs of our long gone chiefs and relatives and camps. In the same way, our grandchildren will someday treasure a record of what things are like today. And this was back in the 70s. And so it holds true today. And I share this quote often, more often than many other quotes, because this then gives me permission to move forward as a researcher and scholar and facilitator of some of our traditional ways of knowing, being, and doing. So back in the early 2000s, when I was completing a master's degree, part of my thesis at the time on intergenerational communication and well-being in Aboriginal life, I wanted to talk about the connection between elders and young people, and how not only um, uh, our way of life, what is part of who we are, but that extension, the relationships, the meaningful relationships we want to continue to build and foster as we move forward within the truth and reconciliation actioning that we are all a part of. I wanted to look at healing practices as a framework for understanding the philosophy of blood tribe people, and how I was going to do that at that time, which I'm very keen on adhering to academic methodology and ethics. So too, that combines with our traditional protocols and how we approach individuals and how we convey what we've learned to those who want to learn and grow and be part of this overall societal healing moving forward. But within the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action, there's 94 as a reminder. Within the education and the health elements, and if you've read some of the resources that ACE has put forward, if you've glanced at my dissertation, you will find that due to various factors, the ill health of First Nations people has been attributed to the following: the change in the diet, and this was drastically felt in the 1800s. At that time, not only were settlers, colonialists moving from the east inward to the plains, and then being met by west sailors and colonizers. So we had this change in diet. The buffalo was being eradicated quite drastically to as well get rid of the Indian problem. But then what do we do while those are still alive? So we move to cow meat, pig meat, and other meat foreign to Plains Indians and specifically Blackfoot people. Dramatic change, and we still see the effects today. Disease was introduced, smallpox specifically, and tuberculosis, and this was quite contagious. Eradicated Blackfoot people in the 1800s by about 2/3. We're still rebuilding, and I think we've rebuilt and doubled the population from the 1800s. Now there's 20,000 plus Blackfoot Confederacy members throughout southern Alberta. Changing in housing and the TP encampments. How does that affect the people when it's not a 500-year transition, when it's only a 20, 30 year at best transition? Water was contaminated, and again the loss of language and cultural identity due to the factors as settlers were moving further inward and throughout eastern to western, what we now call Canada. Specifically, however, the residential school era spanned, 130, 150 years, depending on the nation you're from. And this assimilated and was what is a total institution. And in these total institutions, what happens is your whole identity changes, not of your choice. So then the many effects that occur at that time, loss of identity, loss of language, loss of connection, and all the physiological changes that will occur to those changes. As a reminder, what ACE and myself and many others are working towards is the actioning part of the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action, bringing to light specific calls to action where all levels of government and all Canadian citizens play a vital role in this actioning part. So the federal, provincial, territorial, and Aboriginal governments acknowledge that Aboriginal health in Canada is a direct result of Canadian government policies, including residential schools, and that we must implement the healthcare rights of Aboriginal people as identified in international law, constitutional law, and under the treaties. So to speak, when people say we're all treaty people, we must know what the treaties are within our specific regions to respect and begin to decolonize or take the layers of colonial underpinnings off and renew and rebuild respectful relationships. Call to action number 22 says we call upon those who can affect change within the Canadian healthcare system to recognize the value of Aboriginal healing practices and use them in the treatment of Aboriginal patients in collaboration with Aboriginal healers and elders where requested by Aboriginal patients. Thus, understanding what these are in specific regions, again, I'm broadly speaking here, and then I'll go into detail with 60 Gates to be healing practices moving forward. I must say, my Blackfoot name, Abby Kwigmodaki, Miracle Healing Woman, had I known, and really connected with my name long before when I did in my 40s, that some of these truth and reconciliation calls to action, I actually researched in the early 2000s before the apology and before the TRC 94 calls to action were publicly shared and declared. So I value that. I value that recognition that I have of myself, the ancestral voices, the connections I have to my past, those teachings, and how I'm able to convey and share that, whether it's in academia, whether it's in the work I do now, or in general across the nation in these webinars. So I'm very honored and recognize my connection to my ancestral teachings. So I'm going to do a little bit of comparison, and you can as well. Feel free to, during the Q&A to kind of ask yourself, and bring forward those questions as you reflect and learn and grow moving forward. So First Nations methods, we used, herbs, we had methodologies, we had medicine men and women, or shamans that some utilize, ceremonies, and historically and still today, we are living as creator or giver of life guided. Ishtabatabiyo or Apastaduki, that's giver of life or creator. Asokinagi is a doctor or medicine man or woman. So they're healers. And there's specific rituals that I don't know, unless I'm a healer, or unless I have been given those gifts by Creator, in the form of dreams, to then share with others to help heal ailments that one feels. Western medicine or scientific methods, we utilize doctors, science, chemical medicines, surgical procedures, theories, research, and test subjects. And that's not this is not a downfall, or it's just a comparison of the different worldviews, and how, again, we're still oftentimes practicing colonial undertones, while we're trying to action truth and reconciliation, but we still don't have the tools and the knowledge that will create effective change within the healthcare system. Traditional medicine must be seen within its proper social and cultural context. So learning about these protocols and methodologies from within, First Nations across Canada and the US, we then gain a better insight in how we can complement each other, work together for effective healing for each individual that utilizes the healthcare system. What constitutes an illness differs from society to society, nation to nation, language, context, and understanding. And what constitutes an effective treatment for an illness will also be seen and viewed, ought to be seen and viewed socially, within their own social and cultural context. So it's not diminishing any worldview or any perspective. It's about growing, learning, complementing, working together so that authentic good health is achieved by the practitioner, the healthcare provider, the client, the patient, and that there's this understanding and relationship as we see our healthcare providers moving forward. Healing methods, are not as common as they were pre-Columbus era. But some researchers have stated that there's been a resurgence in the last 50 years. And I think many of you can see that as you go through some research documents written by Indigenous, physicians, across the spectrum, whether it's psychiatry or family medicine or anthropology, and really understanding the context of health, illness, and healing. The transmission of knowledge. So we have a oral transmission of knowledge from First Nations perspective, not saying that nothing wasn't written, but there's not volumes, journal articles written pre contact. It's to say that there is a different way of writing and sharing, whether it was pictographs or hieroglyphics or buffalo robes, winter counts, etc. It's person oriented because of the interaction, and the language, the worldview is action oriented. It's really in the here and now. Um, Western culture often is written text. When written, though, print literature becomes abstract and unchanging. We are hopeful, though, that this method is evolving to becoming inclusive of patient-oriented care while practicing respectful reciprocity as you sit with your patient in whatever surrounding that you see your patients. Again, defining healing or good health or illness is seen from within a specific cultural context and language. So these elements are very important as we're growing and learning within ACE. Uh, working with myself and other knowledge keepers and elders, and moving forward and sharing this knowledge with those who desire to learn more and truly amalgamate various perspectives of healing practices. So it's a way of life for First Nations people. It's not something we did separately. What we did each day within our social norms, our rituals, our ceremonies, within our songs and dances, that was all seen as encompassing good health, which promoted respectful relationships. Thus, it wasn't necessarily, I'm sick, I need to heal. It was our way of life which gave us the good health. And again, looking at Dr. Wade Davis and our ethnosphere and what that is, it encompasses, all cultures, and our intellectual, spiritual, and social web of life that envelops the planet and is as important to its well-being as is the biological web of life that we know as the biosphere. We can define the ethnosphere as being the sum total of our thoughts, our dreams, our ideals, our myths, our institutions, and inspirations brought into by being the imagination since the dawn of consciousness, right? It's symbolic because it's all that we've achieved and the promise that all we can achieve as wildly curious and adaptive species. So again, our culture, our ethnosphere is seen as our immune system, is seen as our mind, body, spirit connection, and our way of life, right? Our ideas, our material culture, our social system, our language, our songs, our dances, our food, how we prepare our food. These are all integral elements of what can be constituted as good health, which is really a way of life for a people. An aspect of any culture is the medical system or the ceremonial practices for many Indigenous peoples. In non-Western cultures, Indigenous, traditional, or non-Western forms of treatment are still of enormous importance, right? There are estimates that about 80% of the inhabitants of the world rely on these traditional teachings and medicines. And even some of our medicines that are made in pharmaceutical factories have relied on those teachings from early medicine men and women who were able to mix certain herbs, certain plants, and make it the drug we know today in various forms. Where did I get this knowledge? Well, you know, I dared to take the chance to talk to those who were part of our sacred societies. They had the reputation within our tribe to be ceremonialists, to be medicine men and women. So I interviewed them in their homes. I had conversations with them, shared some tea and some food with them in their homes. And it was really, again, an open conversation where I was learning, they were sharing their knowledge, and I was able to extract what I needed to with their permission for this specific paper that I wrote years ago. And I'm now able to share this publicly, openly, and it's a tool for us to continue to move forward together. So they talked about plants or herbs. So many of you know that sage, sweetgrass, sweet pine, cedar for many First Nations, they're all foundational to specific, they're used in different ways. For public speaking, and many elders have told me when I had conversations with them, they'll tell me, take some sweetgrass, put it in your pocket, put it in your shoe when you public speak. It wards off negative energy or bad medicine, as we say that in Indian country. For sporting activities, you place it in your shoe or your skate or other that you're wearing because you're so active. It protects your spirit. For ceremonies, it can be used in pipes, in smudges, and for other reasons. For protection and cleansing of your home, you burn as incense when you smudge in the morning, or in one instance, one of the elders shared that when it's foggy, we don't know what moves in the fog. So when it's foggy, you will use sweet pine and you will burn it throughout your home to ensure that there's no negative or dark energy that moves into your home during the foggy days or nights. For medicinal purposes, as directed by the medicine man or woman, during pregnancy and childbirth, as directed by a medicine woman or elder women that have these specific teachings as they provide the care to expectant mothers, and other instances. So really, they're quite versatile, and many of these plants and herbs can be used daily as a daily practice. It can be a daily practice. It's not only used when you're not feeling well. Many people smudge sunrise ceremonies, smudge as soon as the sun rises and you start your day in a good way. The same goes with the table here I provided for you. If you've ever had mint tea, and I'm not saying the store-bought mint, many still go and pick the medicines. They offer tobacco as they pick the medicines, and they say a prayer because you're giving an offering and you're taking the medicine. So there's always that reciprocity, that respectful reciprocity um, for medicine. And the wild mint, you pick it, you wash it, and you dry it. You take the dried mint and then you boil your water, you put the mint in there, and you let it seep for however long you wish it to, however strong you like your tea. You can drink it plain as straight mint tea. You can add some honey, a little bit of brown sugar, or a sweetener if you will. But that's also a daily elixir for many people as well. Again, the songs and the dances are rooted from traditional practices, whether they're dreams or visions. Our ancestors that have these rites of passage, and they can transfer songs and dances to other members. You know, during our Akokatsen, which is our annual circle camp, usually held in August, or during ceremonial transfers. Uh, that is again specific to each nation, whether it's those who are in a longhouse, those who are part of ghost dances, 4-day fasts, or vision quests, lullabies, stick, feather, or hand games, or other. And so these are all a part of a way of life, good feeling, um, and not necessarily when we're not well. So some places, so we're connected to places, and it's important to ground yourself, connect yourself, know the relationship you have, know the relationality of the place, the space, the animals, the water, and those specific sites that are part of your way of life. Nanastiko, for example, Chief Mountain here in southern Alberta and in northern Montana, the Rocky Mountains. Well, there's many teachings for each nation, each and sites that you go for sweat lodge, for fasting, to make offerings, or to meditate. Our circle camp, our Akokatsen, is sacred, and we go there. If we need to make an offering, we put tobacco down, bring some food there, sit, meditate, or specifically during August when we gather, it's a communal gathering for prayer, for renewal, for our sacred societies to then open their bundles and pray for our community, or other sites as suggested by elders or society members, for you to go if there's a certain ailment, whether it's of mind, body, or spirit, that you need help with, through prayer, through fasting, or other. So I'm just trying to time myself and mindful of some of the Q&A that might occur. Why should we document? Well, as my grandfather Mukakin has shared, it is good to document now by various means, but we must respect the sacred or sacred knowledge that we can't document, and we cannot document what happens when there's a bundle opening that's very sacred. We cannot, record during our annual Akokatsen what happens in the teepees of our Motu Geeks, which is our Buffalo Society women, or our Eatskinaks, which is our Horn Society bundle holders. That secret knowledge, even I don't know that as a layperson. So I'm correlating and meshing, infusing healing as living. And healing isn't necessarily there's something wrong with me. It's a way of life. The places, the herbs, the plants, the rituals, the songs, the dances. It's a way of life. And for me, I understand what I know here and what I visualize, what I recollect from memory. I know that. When I share it, I ask that you reflect on it and genuinely value those practices, because these are ancient ways of knowing, being, and doing. We can't not know this. Even though some within the Indian Act or other policies might have tried to outlaw or abolish practices, these were still practiced even in secret. And when they tried to assimilate and eradicate First Nations identity and ways of knowing, being, and doing. And so I'm gonna end with that and open it up for a little bit of Q&A. And I really value your attention, your patience in getting me here this morning. So thank you everyone for listening in.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fox. Thank you everyone for, again, as Dr. Fox said, your patience, and we invite you to use the Q&A function to add your questions there. I do have a few questions ready to go that have been sent anonymously, so I might begin with those. But before we do, thank you, Dr. Fox. I had a revelation, I think. When you were speaking, you said you give and then you take. And I think my revelation as somebody with inflammatory arthritis myself is I was so angry at my body when I got my diagnosis. I was so angry and so disappointed and so frustrated that I was just like trying to take and force my body to do more. But when I started to love and thank my own body, I felt like I actually then started to heal. So I've had the biggest revelation just sitting here, taking in everything that you said, that part of this healing process is giving and taking. It's my comment. And then first question is, what are some fundamental ways for healthcare providers in rheumatology specifically to appropriately recognize and welcome Indigenous healing practices and beliefs along, as you said, along with those colonial medical practices? So how do we integrate them?
Through the webinars such as today, and being open to talking to your local elders and shamans, if you will. It's going to depend on the tribes within the regions. So for BC, there's many tribes throughout BC. So you're going to have to learn that, so a bit of history, and connect with the nations themselves, and then form respectful relationships. Technology is great now, so you can look on the website, you can find maps find the language spoken, know the protocols of, and I'm going to share this right now openly. Always have tobacco in your vehicle, in your, briefcase or purse. Because if you see an elder and you don't know how to navigate, who do I go to? You have the tobacco. Once you offer the tobacco to someone, they'll know what to do. They will receive it because you're requesting, excuse me, I'm respectfully seeking to create relationship and within my work, within my health practice. I'm offering you this tobacco. Can you guide me, as I do not know this process and I want to learn? So once you're offered tobacco, that person will most likely know what to do. So it's that exchange of knowledge. I want to know something, I'm offering this to you, and they in turn will then accept it and help guide you through this process. First step, and that's very important. Again, we can talk about that at another webinar on those protocols, when you want to seek elder guidance, when you want to seek to invite a medicine person into a clinical setting and work with them within that setting. So for my reserve, we often do that, whether it's mental health, addictions, or specific diagnosis of cancer, arthritis, diabetes. We often work with our local healers and elders to come in and share their knowledge with clients, patients, members, and the healthcare team. So that's the first step to take. And then the rest will fall into place, or you can contact me, should you choose to endeavor, after the webinar.
Thank you, Dr. Fox. And I think it really does come back to everything you've taught us previously, which is everything is relational, and that even though we may not know the exact steps of what to do, we fall back on the principles, then we understand intuitively what is the right thing to do. And there's a beautiful question in the Q&A. I'm going to save it though, and hopefully we can add this or include these protocols as a part of our website, our new Truth and Reconciliation website that we'll be launching on June 21st. So very exciting. There's a lot of things coming up, and I do just want to remind everyone, if you do have a few moments, please, please, please complete our survey. And if you would like to join us, please email Cheryl using the link on screen. And with that, Dr. Fox, just being mindful of time, I want to thank you again for all of the energy that you shared with us. Thank you for creating a safe space for us to learn and us to explore and us to mess up and be uncomfortable. And we thank everyone for joining us in today's circle. And with that, have a beautiful weekend, everyone. We hope you take care. And we'll get some information to you, but please fill out our survey. Help us improve these webinars in future. Thank you. Have a great one.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Bye.